I'm Borys. I'm an engineer turned founder. Had an exit in 2015 to an American company called Samba. And then in 2019, I built SMOK Ventures, which is an early stage venture capital fund investing in Central Eastern European founders, building global startups.
Borys, you've looked at the venture market in Central and Eastern Europe from many different perspectives. First as a founder, then an exited founder, you've run an accelerator, and now you've been investing for more than 6 years. So my first question to you is, what has changed over the years? How did your perspective on this market changed? And more importantly, how did the founder landscape change over those years?
I think the founders are much more prepared now versus 10 years ago, 5 years ago, especially the young ones, interestingly. When I talk to those 20, 25-year-olds, that's a huge difference. Both the kind of preparation, how they understand, we see how they perceive their own value, which is also the valuation they're expecting for the startup, but also just ambition. A lot of those things changed tremendously. Like, I would say there are different worlds.
And what do you think is the main reason for that? Is it a generational change? Is it something that comes with the experience of the entire market?
I'll say two things. Number one, most of those founders with that attitude, they've been abroad. They've studied in the UK, they've studied in the US, or at least they've been there for a while. They got they got surrounded by successful people who are very ambitious and who believe they can change the world. And I think this is, they got it from them. This is something that you kind of learn when a lot of successful people are around you. You kind of believe that you can be successful as well. So that's one, just the exchange of information of international approach. And then the second part is there's been many successful ventures in Eastern Europe. So a lot of those people worked for a startup that was successful. I've seen most of those totally prepared founders are those who are part of a unicorn or part of a high growth startup in CE. And now they're like, okay, those two guys managed to do this, and I know they're not as good as they're perceived, so I can do it as well. I think those two things.
Okay, and you being a founder yourself, now having a perspective of an investor, if you could walk us through the change in the mindset, sitting on one side of this spectrum and now being on the other side of the table, what's the main lesson that you could share with founders raising capital from VCs that you wouldn't have if you hadn't had a chance to invest yourself?
Well, as a founder, I've made all the mistakes that I could have. So now at least I can tell them not to make those same mistakes. It's hard to learn from other people's mistakes though. So it's like I can say those things, but it doesn't always, they cannot relate unless they made the same mistakes sometimes. But at least I see in those founders myself sometimes. And then I'm like, no, I'm not investing in that guy. I know we're good at, I know we're great at. I've worked for some great founders as well, like Ashwin Naveen from Samba TV, and I'm kind of looking similar traits. I'm looking for similar traits in them. I'm looking, that I wish I had as a founder as well.
What are those traits so that, we can check some boxes for the founders?
Ambition, focus, ability to change your perception of how you believe, what you believe the market is and what you believe you should be building. So not being too persistent in, being persistent in building, but not being too persistent in your ideas. Your idea doesn't matter, what your customer tells you matters. So you have to very quickly learn from that. So I think those things, there's others, but those three I think are the most important.
Fair enough. Now, let's say a founder comes to you as an investor and you're investing at pre-seed and seed stages across the entire region. So you've seen, many different places. I mean, people from many different places. So if you, if you could generalize a little bit and say, those are the things that I would be looking for in a founder that, reaches out to me and wants to raise money from me. Like, what are those things?
The most important thing is the one that's super hard to describe. Magnetism, maybe.
Okay.
Something that I have a conversation with the founder, I'm like, oh my God, like this is like almost like, when you strike with a girl that you love, like, oh my God, she's so great. Same with, the founder. They have the kind of magnetism that I believe they're going to be successful. They believe they're going to be successful. People around them want to work with them. They somehow they manage to convince the world that they're on the right path, and they are able to convince the best people to join them as co-founders, as employees, investors to invest in them, even though they don't have anything yet. Sometimes those are like first-time founders, like, why would I believe this person is, but they have something like that. I think part of that is communication. They're really good communicators. They can communicate in an exciting way, and at the same time, they're not like bullshitting, super vague. They really understand what they want to build, and they can convince me that this matters. This makes sense. So I think I would say, if it's just one trait, that's the trait. And the ambition, like I can see they're not building something small. They don't want to build another small software house in Poland. They want to build a global leader in some space.
And, there are some hard-won truths that you've earned, again, with your background as a founder. But then, the founders, when they prepare to fundraise, they obviously are bombarded with with lists of, you have to check these boxes, you have to focus on this or that. What do you think is the controversial thing that you believe in that most other people don't, that people don't talk about that much? Like maybe let's not focus on let's not focus on the market, let's not focus on the financials. What is it that you believe in that most people don't?
Hard question. Is there anything like that? I think like one of the things that I believe can be very helpful for a startup is social media presence of the founder. And a lot of investors say this is basically waste of time. It's not working in favor of the startup. It's, they spend too much time in it. I can see how much it helps me when I have an audience and I can like push things to the audience. And I've seen founders who basically, grew their company based on that social media presence, like Michał Sadowski here in Poland, Brand24. We just invested in a guy from NoCap. He's basically promoting his startup to founders because they are the customers through LinkedIn, and he's getting thousands of customers because of that. So if you grow this network really well and you have the audience that is your customers, I would say that beats a lot of other things. So I think
distribution through brand recognition, social media presence is something that is that right?
I believe this is basically the new world, actually.
Okay.
It's not just founders, it's cooks, it's barbers, it's people who work with bees. Like,
really?
Yes. There are TikToks of people who, live video bees and how they like operate with, and they have like millions of views. And they're like the influencers in that space, and they're gonna be the top sellers in that space, sellers of honey, obviously. And so in every space, I think the world is going into like the old media doesn't really matter that much. Have you seen founders celebrating a TechCrunch article recently? Doesn't really matter. A LinkedIn post is gonna get you more audience if you have the right audience. So I would say that's a neglected part. And I think in the future, more and more of those businesses are going to be just based on the personality. Obviously, you need to have a lot more. You need to have in the back end, you have to have the CTO, the product, understand the customers. All those things matter, but these things can be a difference maker.
Let's look at the portfolio that you've built over the years. You've invested in some fantastic founders, many of which have raised money from, much more money from very established investors already. What do you think is the unifying factor for those guys? Like, what makes these guys succeed, whereas others, have not crossed the chasm?
So first thing, I don't believe those who've raised the most are necessarily going to be the best outcomes for us.
Enough.
I already see that's not the case in a few cases. So just ability to raise money is a good indicator, but it's also an indicator that you're working in a hyped industry. Usually those big rounds are a result of a lot of VCs wanting to be part of this. So there's been a competition, so the valuation goes up. That doesn't necessarily mean those startups are, going to be successful. It just means that they raised during the kind of hype cycle. But the unifying factor, like one of those is the industry. If the industry is currently hyped, obviously they're going to raise more. But the second part is, again, what I said at the beginning, communication. They are able to position themselves uniquely on the market and present it in a way that just people understand it, and both the employees and both the investors understand it, and they believe that those guys are just best positioned to win the market. That's what VCs are investing into. You need to be investing in those winners on a hype market, on a big market, right?
And on the flip side of this, what do you think is the red flag for any VC really? Like, be it at pre-seed stage, at seed stage, or later on, when you're already in and, your founders want to raise money from other parties. Like, what do you think is the typical red flag that you're seeing, especially for founders, hauling from the CEE region?
So different VCs think differently. I wouldn't invest in a team that cannot, that doesn't have like a real hustler in the team, even if there is amazing technology, world-renowned scientists working something breakthrough. If they don't have someone who can sell this properly, both sell it to the investors and to the customers, I just don't believe I have the means to help them to be successful. They need that person in the founding team. But that's me. I've seen other funds that bet on those kind of technical founders, and they try to convert them to, at least one of those people to be sellers. And they've been successful. Like Bitspiration Booster is one of those, funds by Andrzej Targosz, and they really invest in those kind of not too exciting founders who are really smart. And Andrzej is spending a lot of time with them, and in some cases been super successful in getting them to, out there. So there's different types of investors, and that's for the founders, it's really important that you approach the right investors as well.
Speaking about that, could you perhaps share your thoughts on this part of the market specifically? Because I think this is really a crucial lesson, especially for those who are being rejected by VCs, and they often, I guess they start thinking, am I doing the right thing? Like, what would your advice be to founders who are, trying to raise and they get, so many no's from different VCs? Like, what would be your advice? Like, how do you approach rejection from a VC?
Well, something's definitely wrong if everyone is saying no. Like, if most people are saying no, that's normal. That's gonna be always the case. But if you're getting the same feedback from everyone, or you're not getting feedback, like, usually you need to change something. Very often, unfortunately, it's you. It's you have to change. But that's possible. Like, I've seen teams that changed. I've seen, like, I mentioned on LinkedIn recently, I talked to this Romanian startup called Chamber, and I met them like 3 years ago. Typical Eastern European mindset. They were like cool team, right? But I was like, are they actually thinking big enough? Are they gonna, like, I just couldn't believe this team is is prepared right now to hustle enough to be a market leader in some space. And I just met them randomly, like 2 months ago, maybe. They moved to California a year ago. They got to Techstars. They've lived there for a year. Were approached, like they were like, surrounded by founders building with much bigger ambition. And when I talked to Alex recently, I was like, okay, this is a completely new person. Like the way they talk, the ambition, also what they're building, how they communicate, they changed. And this is the same person, they just kind of believed in themselves a bit more. So I think I would say, and the VCs see that, like the investors see that you don't believe you saying things, but you don't really believe you will, achieve. And that's a big part of success. You yourself have to first believe that you're good enough to be building. And once you move to Silicon Valley, you talk to all those people and you see, hey, like, wow, this guy raised 20 million. They're not very good. It's like, I'm better than this. Like, I can do this. Like, this really helps. This really helps. If you live in Romania, in Poland, in Slovakia, in all those countries, maybe once in a year you see a big round like that, it's kind of say, oh, I'm not good enough. Like, just because you're not meeting those people. So I think that's the biggest. So I would say if you're rejected, or maybe if you cannot raise, move elsewhere. It's easier to raise sometimes in Silicon Valley because there's different types of investors, and they might, the Eastern European investors tend to be kind of thinking smaller, and maybe your vision is too big, you're too crazy for Eastern Europeans, so maybe go there. Just change the scenery, but just I think making sure you believe in yourself. Sounds like a coach, but
well, picking up on this, how important do you think is the entire ecosystem for you as a founder and building your company? Because I think what you've just mentioned reflects a much larger thought around what's missing here that other places have. Like, what do you think is missing, and how important is the the type of people that you surround yourself with in your entrepreneurial journey?
Super, super important. Like what those guys have and what Eastern European countries don't have right now, maybe outside of Estonia, is that there is just a lot of people, angel investors or operators in startups, which are growing fast. They're not necessarily founders, but operators in startups, and they do a lot of angel checks. And they not just do angel checks, but they also can get you interest to the other founders, to other investors. A lot of those rounds are not VC rounds; they're like angel rounds, and those don't happen too much in Eastern Europe. Outside of Estonia, for some reason, they're really patriotic in investing, and they, even small rounds. But every startup in Estonia has like 10 angels, all of them for like, Verif and Pipedrive and Skype and all of those big unicorns from Estonia. We need more of that in Eastern Europe, in Poland, in Romania, in Croatia, in all of those countries. There is like even the groups of angels are different. Here it's corporate angels, and they're not very helpful, unfortunately. You can take the money, but sometimes they can actually put you down because they haven't seen startups being successful. They've seen other normal companies being successful. So they're gonna push you more into, profitability quickly, building something sustainable, which is great idea, but not for a high growth startup. It's a good idea for, to have a bootstrap type of company. So the type of angel investors that you approach, that you have in your cap table, can either, lift you up or put you down, depending on, who you take.
And how do you approach this as an investor? Like you're known in the ecosystem to have engaged with a lot of former operators. Some of them are, investors in your fund, and you've been evangelizing this thought for quite some time now. Like, how do you think a founder that is about to raise money should approach this problem? Like, do they have to go elsewhere from day one, or is there hope for them to raise money in here?
There isn't that many. Like there are a few funds like ours where we think, either global domination or nothing. The traditional VC approach. most funds haven't seen those results, so they kind of, they're okay with something smaller. So it really depends on your ambition too. But if you have a really big ambition, I would say talk to some of those funds that have success before, or at least they strive to have that kind of success. They invest in those type of kind of very crazy, very ambitious businesses. But it's, you don't have to limit yourself to Eastern Europe. I've seen, we've just invested in a company together with a US fund, and we do that all the time with UK funds. You can approach, having us on board makes it easier for you also to raise more, because you have like half of your round secured. So it's easier for you to get to California and get some more money. I mean, I would say probably best to be there. Like it's gonna get, but sometimes it's, we are often the last round of funding from Eastern Europe. So very often how it goes is, we founder raised like a pre-seed round with us, 500,000 maybe, and then the next round they're already in California, they're already raising there. I think that's a good approach. But if you can raise early from angels or VC funds there, go ahead. I think that's gonna get you in a faster route to success.
I have a round of quick questions for you. I was wondering, how you look at certain things that are considered to be essential for founders in here. So let me start by asking, as a founder, how do you look at your founders going through accelerators? Yay or nay?
Yay, if it's YC.
Okay. Now, the second question was actually about YC. Like, do you wholeheartedly recommend going to YC for any founder from here? Yay or nay?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, let's look at terms. For the first round of financing, safe notes for a founder from CEE, yay or nay?
Yeah, of course.
And why, if I may ask?
It's the most founder-friendly instrument. It's not very VC-friendly, but if you
and how so? If you could explain just quickly.
Well, the safe doesn't have a maturity date. If you raise a safe and then you never ever raise any more funding, I have no way to exit, so that's not great. Also, it's the quickest. You don't have to pay the lawyers, which is great. I don't have to pay the lawyers, and the founders don't. So it's the quickest way to raise, and it's like the most standard terms. If you have a convertible even, you still negotiate a lot of, there is not standard convertible in Poland or Central Eastern Europe. So the standard just worked very well.
Which leads me to my next quick question. Convertible notes, yay or nay?
Nay.
And why?
Just too complicated. I've seen angels signing those and then demanding money back, negotiating the interest. The interest rates are crazy now. You never know where it's going to go. So there's just too many risks. If you can do a safe, do a safe.
Moving on, price rounds for pre-seed founders, yay or nay?
Yeah, sure. Why not? Sure. I mean, better than convertibles for sure.
Fair enough. And in terms of, this is not a yay or nay question, but in terms of what would you want as a baseline, what would you want to see if you're about to invest in a pre-seed founder, and quickly going through certain points, like single co-founder versus multiple co-founders, single founders versus multiple co-founders?
Of course, multiple, unless you've been hunting for those guys, the last 2 weeks on hackathons, then go single. But if you have a team that are, that can do different things differently than you do, of course, it lowers the risk. The only reason to go, the only good thing of being a single founder is that you're not going to have an argument with your co-founders because you don't have any, and that's it. All of the others are, cons.
And for the right co-founder setup, are you still, hot on, hustler, hacker type of a relationship? Like, who would you prefer as the co-founding team archetype?
I would say designer is important, at least even more important right now, where a lot of the backend is just AI. And then the design is what makes the difference. I would say hacker, hustler, designer, basically the best one. yeah, it works exactly the same as it used to. The only change is you don't need as many people in the backend now. Things can be built quicker, and just with the CTO who can, be building the product, the MVP of a product, and the hoster be selling, and the designer be like that's all you need for a pre-seed and maybe for a first year very often.
For a pre-seed VC, based in Central and Eastern Europe, looking for global dominance in the companies that you're about to back, how important is profitability for you these days?
Not at all.
Not at all.
Of course not. It's startups are not about profitability.
Perfect.
Good metrics that make sense, that are not like that you have that I can understand you can be profitable in the future, but obviously not now.
Fair enough. And in terms of the diversity of the team, doesn't have to be race or gender, but like how diverse of a team would you prefer to? What's the diversity factor that you would look for in a team that you're about to back?
The most important for me is the diverse, as in backgrounds, but as in being from different countries.
Okay.
Very important that you speak English, and that's a default in your language, in your startup. So if you have an American founder and a Polish founder, for example, that's a perfect mix, because you have two different backgrounds, two different ways of thinking, and that only helps. If you have 3 white guys from Warsaw, from the same university, yeah, you can still be successful, but less likely.
Flipping to the US, when's the right time to do it?
In the beginning, don't flip, just set up in Delaware.
And is it possible? Do you believe it's possible to have a founding team based in here with a company set up in Delaware from day one?
Yeah, most of the companies that we invest into have this setup. It is obviously possible.
Great.